alright? I need to be honest before I even start this. I've replayed that night so many times that I don't even know which version is the most accurate anymore. It's been almost 9 months, long enough that people assume I've moved on. I have, technically. I dated, I traveled, I wore nicer things. I stayed in places that had staff instead of receptionists. But I still think about him when something small happens, not dramatic things, just normal stuff. And I hate that it's always the normal stuff. We didn't break up over cheating or screaming or something explosive. It was quieter than that, he proposed. I didn't say yes, and then I said things I can't take back. At the time, I thought I was being honest. I still think I was being honest, just maybe, not kind. He had made the whole day a production. He didn't say it was a proposal day, but I could tell. He gets this very focused energy when he's nervous, like he's rehearsing something in his head while pretending to be relaxed. He took me shopping earlier that day, bought me things I didn't ask for, nice dinner. He looked proud. I remember feeling weird about it even before the beach. Not because I didn't love him. I did. I just kept thinking about the future and feeling tight in my chest. When he got down on one knee, I didn't feel happy. I felt trapped, and I know how awful that sounds. He wasn't trapping me, he was offering himself. But it felt final. Like I was choosing a version of my life permanently. I panicked. I didn't say, "You're making an idiot of yourself," in some cruel, dramatic tone. It wasn't like that. It came out sharp because I was embarrassed and overwhelmed and people were around. I told him to get up. I think I said something like, "Don't do this here." I remember my face feeling hot. I walked away because I couldn't breathe properly. Later in the car, he kept trying to talk, and I told him we'd talk at home because I needed space to organize my thoughts. That part is true. I wasn't trying to manipulate him. I just didn't want to say something reactive. And then I did anyway. When we got home, he kept asking why. And I tried to explain that I didn't feel ready. That timing matters, that I wanted more stability first. He kept pressing, not aggressively, just hurt. He asked if he didn't provide enough, if he didn't spoil me enough. That's when I said it. I told him I'd always imagined marrying someone wealthy, someone who could make life easier. I said I didn't want to feel guilty every time my partner spent money on me. I said I wanted to be carefree. Even typing that now makes me cringe a little. But here's the part that never gets said. I wasn't asking him to change. I was admitting I wanted something different. At the time, it felt mature to be honest instead of accepting a proposal I wasn't fully sure about. He looked at me like I'd just rewritten our entire relationship. He asked if he was just a placeholder until someone richer came along. I said no, immediately, because that wasn't how it felt in my head. He wasn't a placeholder. He was safe. He loved me in a way that was very steady, very intentional. He would budget around me, rearrange his hours. He'd remember small details I forgot I mentioned. But safety and stability aren't the same thing. I didn't want to feel like the person who limited his ambition either. He worked so much. 50-hour weeks sometimes. I'd see how tired he was. And I kept imagining that if I married him, that would just be our life. Work, budgeting, moderation, planning. I told myself I deserved ease, so we ended it. Not that night exactly. It stretched for a couple of weeks after that, quieter, less touching. Conversations that felt like negotiations. Then it was done. For the first 2 months, I felt powerful. I won't lie about that. I felt like I had chosen myself. And then I met someone who had exactly what I thought I wanted. He owned properties, drove something I couldn't pronounce properly. The first date was at a restaurant where the waiter explained the water options. I remember feeling like I'd stepped into something elevated. He paid without looking at the bill. That detail stuck with me. I told myself, see, this is what I meant. But he didn't ask many questions about me. Not real ones. He liked how I looked next to him. I could feel that. I became interchangeable. If I didn't laugh at something, he'd just move on. If I disagreed, he'd smooth over it. It was comfortable but hollow. I dated 2 more after that. Different personalities, same atmosphere. Generous, busy, distracted. None of them rearranged their lives around me. None of them noticed if I'd had a bad day unless I made it obvious. None of them memorized the way I take my tea or remembered the name of my old childhood dog because I mentioned it once 6 months prior. And I started thinking about how he used to look at me when I talked about stupid things. Not in an intense way, just like it mattered. I didn't reach out then. Pride mostly. Then about 3 months ago, I found out he was seeing someone. I didn't go looking for that information. A mutual friend mentioned it casually. Said she has a little boy. I pretended it didn't bother me. It did. I looked her up that night. She looks normal. That sounds rude, but I mean it neutrally. She doesn't look flashy. She looks settled. There are pictures of them at a park. Him holding the kid on his shoulders. That one hit something in me I wasn't prepared for. He looks calmer. That's what bothers me the most. He doesn't look heartbroken. He doesn't look like someone who lost the love of his life. He looks stable. And I keep thinking, if what we had was as real as I believe it was, how is he able to just transfer that energy somewhere else? I know that's unfair. I ended it. I know that. But part of me still believes he loved me in a deeper way than this. And I hate that I even think that. It makes me sound arrogant. I haven't messaged him. I've typed things, deleted them, simple things. Hey, I hope you're doing well. That's it, nothing dramatic, but I can't bring myself to send it. Because what if he responds politely? What if he doesn't respond at all? What if he responds warmly? I don't know which would hurt more. I tell myself I learned something, that money isn't enough, that comfort without intimacy is empty. But learning something doesn't mean you get to rewind. And lately, I've been thinking about that kid calling him by his name, or worse, something softer. And I don't know why that part is the one that won't leave me alone. Continuation. I didn't decide to start checking his social media every day. It just happened. At first it was once a week, then every couple of days. Now it's most mornings without me even admitting that's what I'm doing. I'll tell myself I'm just scrolling. But my thumb knows where to go. If he hasn't posted, I feel this weird relief, like nothing has progressed. If he has, my stomach does this small drop. It's not dramatic. I don't cry, I just feel off for a few hours. Last Sunday he posted a picture at some park. The kid was on his shoulders again. There was one where the three of them were sitting on a picnic blanket. She was leaning into him. He looked comfortable, not performative, not trying to prove anything, comfortable. What unsettles me isn't that he looks happy, it's that he looks settled. Like he's building something stable, like he's not waiting for anything better. I keep telling myself, you left, you don't get to feel territorial, but it still feels like something that belonged to me is being used somewhere else. A mutual friend invited me to a small birthday thing 2 weeks ago. Casual. Nothing big. She mentioned his name like it was nothing. He might come by later. I said I had plans. I didn't. I just didn't trust my face. I don't know what expression I would have worn if I saw him walk in with her. I don't want to look desperate, or jealous, or worse, irrelevant. Then I heard through the same friend that he's thinking about moving in with her when her lease ends. That information sat in my chest all day. Moving in is different. Moving in means routine. It means toothbrushes and grocery lists and shared laundry baskets. It means permanence creeping in. I tried to act unaffected. I even made a joke about how fast he moves on. But later that night, I kept picturing him assembling furniture for her, helping with the kids' school run, being folded into someone else's structure. And the worst part is I can't even tell if I miss him or if I miss being chosen that way. One of the men I dated last year texted me out of nowhere. He's going to Spain for a week. Asked if I wanted to join. Private villa, friends flying in. A year ago, I would have said yes immediately. I still said yes. Not because I wanted to go, but because I wanted to prove to myself I still had options, that I wasn't the one left behind building nothing. Spain was exactly what it sounds like. Expensive, clean, beautiful in a way that doesn't require effort. I wore dresses that looked good in photos. I posted selectively. He barely noticed when I left early one night to sit alone on the terrace. The man I'm seeing, or whatever we are, asked if I were okay. I said I was tired. I thought about how my ex used to know the difference between tired and withdrawn without me saying it. That comparison is becoming automatic now. I don't even mean to do it. When I got back, I ran into his sister at a supermarket. I didn't even see her until she said my name. She hugged me. That almost undid me. She said he's doing really well, that he seems lighter, that she likes the new girl because she's calm, grounded, good with her son. I nodded like I was genuinely happy for him. On the drive home, I replayed the word lighter. Was I heavy? I've started looking at his girlfriend's photos more closely than I should. Not in a hateful way, just assessing. She dresses simpler than I do. She doesn't look like she tries too hard. She works in a school, I think. There are pictures of art projects on her page. She looks patient. I hate that I've reduced her to traits in my head. Calm, stable, maternal. Like I'm analyzing why she makes sense for him. The kid has started appearing in more photos, weekend trips, ice cream, Little League. There was one caption that said, "Proud of this little man." That phrase stuck with me all day. I don't know why that's the one that makes my chest tighten. Maybe because I can picture him saying it out loud. I know his voice when he's being sincere. I almost called him last Friday. I'd had 2 glasses of wine, nothing extreme. Just enough that my thoughts got louder. I scrolled to his name, stared at it. I told myself I wasn't trying to break anything, I just wanted to hear his voice, just to see if it felt the same. I didn't press it. I turned my phone off instead. My aunt asked me recently why we didn't work out. She asked it casually, like it was small talk. I had to summarize 4 years in one sentence. I said something about timing, different priorities, wanting different futures. It sounded neat, controlled. It didn't include the part where I told him I wanted someone wealthier. It didn't include the look on his face. I've thought about showing up somewhere I know he'll be, not dramatically, just coincidentally, to see how he reacts, to see if there's hesitation in his eyes. But that feels manipulative, and I don't want to be that person. The wealthy guy from Spain just announced he's engaged. I saw it this morning. Big ring, big party, everyone commenting about how perfect they are. I didn't feel jealous. I felt tired. Like I chased something that doesn't actually mean much if the person next to you doesn't look at you like you're irreplaceable. I found an old photo of me and my ex last week while clearing storage. We were in the kitchen. He was behind me, arms around my waist, both of us mid-laugh, not posed. I almost deleted it. I didn't. I keep catching myself imagining a scenario where he realizes he rushed into this, where he remembers how we were, where he calls me, and every time that thought surfaces, I feel 2 things at once: hope and shame, because I'm the one who walked away. And I don't know if I actually want him back, or if I just can't stand the idea that he doesn't want me anymore. Continuation. Alright, this next stretch feels different already. Quieter, less dramatic in my head, which almost scares me more. I didn't consciously decide to stop posting as much, but I have. I used to post little things, dinners, outfits, random thoughts. Now I hesitate before sharing anything. It feels performative, like I'd be posting to prove something to someone who isn't even looking. Or maybe he is, I don't know. Either way, I've gone quieter online. Fewer stories, fewer updates. I told myself I'm just protecting my privacy. But if I'm honest, I think I don't want to invite comparison anymore. I don't want to measure my life next to his and come up lacking. A mutual friend mentioned recently that he's been making an effort with the child's father, meeting for coffee, keeping things respectful, making sure there's no tension. That detail complicated something for me. It's easier to tell yourself someone's settled when you imagine them taking the easiest option. But that doesn't sound easy. That sounds intentional, thoughtful. He was always like that. He'd rather over-communicate than create resentment. I caught myself almost feeling proud of him, and then was immediately irritated that I felt that way. I finally saw him in person about a month ago. I almost didn't go. It was another one of those gatherings where his name came up casually, and I had to decide if I was brave or foolish. I went. I told myself I was over it. I even believed it for most of the day. I did my makeup carefully but not dramatically. Picked something simple to wear. I didn't want to look like I was trying. When he walked in, my body reacted before my brain did. Just this quick drop in my stomach. He saw me. There was that half-second pause, not long enough for anyone else to notice. He smiled. Warm, not guarded, not uncomfortable. That almost made it worse. She was next to him, the girlfriend. She looks exactly like she does in pictures. Calm, open face. She introduced herself like she genuinely meant it. No edge. He didn't avoid me. He didn't hover either. He behaved like someone who has processed something and moved forward. At one point, the kid ran up to him. I didn't even know the child was there until I heard the voice. He bent down immediately, instinctively. Listened to whatever small story was being told. It wasn't theatrical. It was ordinary. That's what broke something in me. Ordinary. He wasn't performing fatherhood. He was just there. We spoke briefly. Small talk, work, weather, safe topics. He asked how I've been, and I gave the curated answer. Good. Busy. He nodded like he accepted that. I drove home that night and didn't cry. I just felt displaced. A few weeks after that, I started seeing someone new. Not seriously at first, just coffee. He's attentive in a way I used to say I wanted. He listens. He follows up on things I mention. He asks about my day and actually waits for the answer, and I find myself half present. He told me about a promotion he's hoping for, and I caught myself thinking, my ex would have stayed up late helping him prep for that. That comparison slipped in without permission. The new guy? I don't want to reduce him to that. Deserves better than being measured against a memory. And I can feel myself holding back emotionally, like I'm protecting something that isn't even active anymore. A friend of mine said something that irritated me more than it should have. We were out for drinks, and I made some comment about how rare what my ex and I had was. She looked at me for a second and said gently, "Are you sure you're not just romanticizing it now that you can't have it?" I laughed it off, made a joke, but it sat with me. Romanticizing, maybe I am. Memory edits things, softens edges, erases the parts where we argued about money or where I felt restless. It highlights the way he looked at me in kitchens and ignores the tightness in my chest when he talked about long-term plans. I've thought about therapy. The thought came up randomly one afternoon. Not because I'm spiraling visibly, just because I feel stuck in something repetitive. But I don't like the idea of sitting in a room and saying out loud, "I left someone who loved me and now I regret it." That feels humiliating. A few nights ago, I deleted his number. I stared at it for a long time before doing it, memorized it first. I don't know why, habit maybe, or insurance. Deleting it felt dramatic for about 5 seconds. Then, nothing changed. I can still find him online. I can still type the number back in if I want to. It didn't create the clean break I thought it might. I heard through someone else that they're planning a holiday together, the three of them, somewhere coastal, I don't know where. I've noticed something strange lately. I dream about him less. For months, he showed up constantly in my sleep. Sometimes apologizing, sometimes just existing. Now, it's rare. And that should be a good sign. Instead, it makes me nervous, like my mind is finally letting him go without my permission. I had a moment last week where I genuinely thought, I think I'm over this. It felt calm, neutral. I went almost 2 days without checking anything. Then I heard from someone that he defended me when a group conversation turned into quiet criticism about what I did. Apparently, he said something like, "We both made choices. It wasn't one-sided." That detail hit me unexpectedly. He didn't have to do that. He could have let them paint me as the villain. It would have been easier. That softness undid some of the resentment I'd been building to protect myself, and I checked his page again that night. So much for being over it. I've been thinking lately about whether I ever truly valued him when I had him, or if I valued what I thought I could get instead. It's uncomfortable to admit that I might not have recognized something steady because it didn't feel impressive enough. Someone flirted with me seriously last weekend. Not surface level. He started talking about future plans in a way that implied longevity. Asked where I see myself in 5 years. I felt myself pull back immediately. 5-year questions feel dangerous now. I used to be the one pushing for upward movement. Bigger. Better. More. Now, I'm cautious. I'm starting to understand something that I didn't when I walked away. Love doesn't freeze in place just because you regret your decision later. It keeps moving. He kept moving, and I'm slowly realizing that wanting something back doesn't mean it's still available. That doesn't make the wanting disappear. It just makes it quieter. Continuation. Okay. I finally had the conversation I'd been avoiding with the guy I've been seeing. We were sitting in his kitchen, nothing dramatic. He had cooked. I remember thinking he puts effort into small things in a way that's familiar. He asked me, gently, if I was actually in this, not accusing, just honest. He said sometimes it feels like I'm standing slightly outside of whatever this is. I could have deflected. I almost did. It would have been easy to blame stress, work, or timing. Instead, I told him the truth. Not every detail, but enough. I said I don't think I fully processed my last relationship. I said I thought I had, but maybe I didn't. I told him I care about him, but I'm aware I'm holding something back and I don't know if that's fair. He didn't get angry. That almost made it worse. He just nodded slowly and said he'd felt it. There was this quiet understanding between us that we're both adults and no one's the villain here. But something shifted. He's still kind, still responsive, just a little more guarded now, like he's protecting himself from investing too deeply. I can't blame him. A few days after that, the holiday photos went up. I didn't look immediately. I saw the notification, closed the app, and told myself I didn't need to know. I lasted most of the evening. Then I checked. They were by the sea somewhere. Windy hair. Casual. There was a short video, the kid running towards him, yelling something. It wasn't his name. It was a nickname, not Dad. But not neutral either. Something softer. Familiar. That detail caught in my chest more than I expected. Not because I want that life specifically. I don't think I do. But because it shows time has passed in a way that isn't reversible. You don't give someone a nickname like that on week 1. I decided after that I was going to stop checking. And I did. A full week. 7 days where I didn't search his name, didn't scroll for clues, didn't ask mutual friends subtle questions disguised as curiosity. I felt strangely proud of myself by day 4, like I was reclaiming control. By day 7, I felt empty. It's uncomfortable how much of my mental background noise has been tied to him. Removing it left silence, not relief, just space. My cousin mentioned him casually over dinner last weekend. She didn't mean anything by it, just said she'd heard he's really stepped up in his new situation. I smiled and nodded and kept eating. But I noticed something different this time. I wasn't angry. Earlier versions of me would have bristled, felt defensive, felt replaced. Now, it just felt like information. That doesn't mean it didn't sting, it just didn't flare. I ran into his girlfriend alone last Tuesday, completely unexpected, grocery store of all places. For a split second I considered pretending I hadn't seen her, but she'd already noticed me. She smiled first. We made small talk in the cereal aisle. It was surreal. Two women discussing oat milk and traffic patterns while orbiting the same man. She didn't look threatened. She didn't look smug either. Just normal. At one point she said something like, "He talks about you kindly, you know." That surprised me. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. Driving home, I realized something uncomfortable. She doesn't see me as competition. She sees me as part of his past. The guy I've been seeing has pulled back slightly. It's subtle, but I can feel it. Fewer long texts. Less future talk. More present focused. I don't blame him. If someone told me they were still untangling an ex, I'd hesitate too. I sat down one night and wrote out what I actually want in a partner, not what sounds impressive, not what looks good socially, just qualities: stable, attentive, kind, resilient, emotionally present, consistent. I stared at the list afterwards for a long time. It didn't include wealth. It didn't include anything impressive. It didn't include high status. That realization didn't feel triumphant. It felt humbling. A few nights ago, I had a dream about him. But it was different this time. He proposed again in the dream. Same nervous energy, same steady look, and I said no, not because I wanted someone richer, just because I wasn't ready. I woke up unsettled. It made me question whether I'd been rewriting the past to make myself the tragic one. Maybe I wasn't ready then. Maybe I still wouldn't be. I've almost stopped asking about him altogether. When his name comes up, I don't lean in the way I used to. I've noticed I'm less angry now, less defensive, more reflective. I've thought about reaching out one final time. Not to disrupt anything, just to apologize properly. I never really did that. I explained, I justified it, I rationalized, but I didn't apologize. I sat with my phone in my hand a few nights ago and asked myself what the goal would be. Relief, forgiveness, re-entry. If it's not purely for him, then it's not clean. So I didn't. And for the first time, it wasn't about pride. It was about not inserting myself into something stable just because I feel unfinished. I've been questioning something quietly. Do I miss him, or do I miss who I was when someone loved me that steadily? There's a difference. Lately, there have been small moments where he doesn't enter my mind at all. I'll be walking somewhere or laughing with a friend and realize an hour has passed without reference. Those moments don't feel like betrayal anymore. They feel like space, not dramatic healing, not closure, just space. And I think that might be the first honest shift I've had in a long time. Analysis. What makes this story unsettling isn't the breakup itself. People refuse proposals every day. Relationships end over differences in goals, timing, finances, or emotional readiness. None of that is unusual. What makes this narrative fascinating is the slow psychological reversal that happens afterwards, the way certainty quietly erodes once reality replaces imagination. At the beginning of the relationship's collapse, the narrator believed she was making a rational choice. She framed it as honesty, maturity, and self-respect. In her mind, she wasn't rejecting love, she was rejecting limitation. She believed she was choosing freedom and opportunity instead of settling too early. This is a very modern conflict. For many people today, especially those who grow up in environments where ambition and lifestyle are constantly compared, relationships are evaluated like investments. The question quietly becomes, is this the best possible outcome I can secure for myself? That mindset doesn't always come from greed. Often it comes from fear. Fear of stagnation, fear of regret, fear of choosing a life that feels smaller than it could be. The narrator's decision was built on that exact tension. She didn't dislike him. She didn't distrust him. She didn't even question his loyalty. What frightened her was the predictability of the future he represented. Stability felt like permanence, and permanence felt like confinement. Psychologically, this is a form of anticipatory regret. Instead of evaluating the relationship as it existed, she evaluated it based on hypothetical futures she imagined might feel restrictive. The mind tends to exaggerate these imagined futures, turning ordinary realities, budgeting, routine, long work weeks into symbols of a trapped life. But imagined futures have a critical weakness. They are emotionally abstract. They don't contain the texture of real daily experiences. The narrator assumed wealth and status would produce emotional ease. What she actually discovered later was something more complicated. Affluence created comfort, but it also removed the small attentions that made her previous relationship feel personal. This is where the emotional shift begins. One of the most subtle but powerful themes in the story is attention. Her ex paid attention, not in a dramatic or obsessive way, but in quiet, observant ways that accumulate over time. Remembering details, adjusting schedules, noticing moods. Attention is often undervalued because it looks ordinary, it doesn't photograph well, it doesn't create impressive stories. But psychologically, attention is one of the primary ways humans experience love. Being noticed signals that you matter enough to occupy someone's mental space. The wealthy men she dated afterwards didn't provide that. They provided comfort, convenience, and spectacle, but their attention was diffuse. Their lives were large, busy, and socially complex. She became a pleasant addition rather than a central figure. That difference is what slowly destabilized her earlier confidence. Another interesting dynamic in the story is ownership of emotional identity. While they were together, she occupied a specific role in his life, the person he prioritized, the person whose reactions mattered most. When she left, that role didn't disappear, it transferred. Seeing that transfer is what creates the narrator's deepest discomfort. Notice that her strongest emotional reactions aren't about romance. They're about normal scenes, parks, grocery shopping, quiet holidays, and the child sitting on his shoulders. These are symbols of integration. They show that her ex didn't remain suspended in emotional limbo after the breakup. He continued building a life. That challenges a hidden assumption many people carry after ending a relationship, that the other person will remain emotionally marked by the loss for a long time. When someone recovers faster than expected, it creates a strange sense of displacement. It forces the person who left to confront the possibility that what they walked away from was not only meaningful, it was also replaceable. That idea is uncomfortable for anyone. The narrator repeatedly struggles with a quiet question. Was she truly irreplaceable, or was she simply first? Her ex's behavior complicates the answer. He doesn't resent her publicly. He defends her in conversations. He remains polite and calm when they meet. That emotional maturity removes the possibility of framing him as bitter or damaged. Ironically, that makes the loss harder to rationalize. If he had become hostile or resentful, it would support a narrative that she escaped something unhealthy. Instead, he appears stable, compassionate, and increasingly fulfilled. The narrator is forced to confront a more difficult interpretation. She may have misjudged the value of what she had. Another key element is temporal perception, how time reshapes emotional narratives. When relationships end, memory often undergoes editing. Negative moments fade faster than positive ones. Over time, the mind constructs a cleaner version of the past than the one that actually existed. Her friend hints at this when she asks whether the narrator is romanticizing the relationship now that it's unavailable. This question is critical because regret doesn't always come from genuine loss. Sometimes it comes from lost possibility. Once something becomes inaccessible, it gains psychological weight simply because it cannot be retrieved. The narrator herself begins to question this. Her dream where she refuses the proposal again suggests that even now she might not be ready for the life he wants. That dream quietly undermines the idea that everything would have worked if she had simply said yes. This introduces another uncomfortable possibility. The breakup may have been inevitable, even if the reasoning she gave at the time was flawed. One of the most revealing shifts in the story happens near the end, when she writes down what she actually wants in a partner. The list contains qualities that look remarkably similar to the man she rejected, but that realization doesn't lead to a dramatic attempt to win him back. Instead, it produces humility. She recognizes that inserting herself into his current life would likely destabilize something that appears healthy. This is where the story becomes less about regret and more about self-awareness. The narrator begins to understand that love is not static. It doesn't wait indefinitely for someone to reconsider. Emotional investments move forward with time, attaching themselves to new people, new routines, and new meanings. Her ex didn't replace her because he loved her less. He moved forward because people eventually redirect the care they have to give, and that is perhaps the hardest truth the narrator has to face. Regret does not restore opportunity, it only clarifies what mattered after the chance to choose it has passed. By the end of the story, the narrator isn't dramatically healed or completely resolved. Instead, she enters a quieter psychological space, one where the intensity of the comparison slowly fades. The most important development isn't whether she still misses him. It's that she finally begins to accept a reality many people resist. Sometimes growth happens after a decision, not before it. And by the time that growth arrives, the life that could have been built with someone else has already moved on without you.